What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jericholic8704, here to bring you just a goddamn awful edition of Raw's Jericholic8704. Seriously, this Raw, May 31st, 2004, it was from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and it was a, quote, special edition of Monday Night Raw, and they never really said what that meant, except for the final segment. JR noted that it was because it was Memorial Day. And Memorial Day, obviously, is a very... it's a very common holiday here in the United States of America, and, majority of people go to the beach because it's a 3-day weekend. So normally a Memorial Day Raw isn't all that good because kind of like, if it falls on any other holiday, people know they're not really going to tune in because they're going to be doing stuff with their family, or they're going to be coming back from a vacation or a trip or something like that. So clearly they did not put a lot of thought into this Raw, which makes sense because aside from the opening match, this Raw just sucked a giant dick. So let's hop right in. We opened up with a World Tag Team Championship match. So Edge and Chris Benoit, the reigning tag team champions on Raw, defended against La Resistance. Now, for those of you who don't know, La Resistance is billed from being from Montreal, Quebec. And for the first time, I think, in their careers, and the first time in my life, because I don't remember this match at all, probably because I was out doing stuff on Memorial Day, because that's what normal Americans do on Memorial Day. They go and celebrate and go on trips and shit. So I probably missed this Raw when I was a kid. Anyway, La Resistance came out to the biggest pop I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And of course, King makes the comment about like Bizarro World and everything. And I will say the fans were consistent. They booed Edge and Chris Benoit, which is ironic considering both Edge and Benoit are also Canadian, which is kind of funny. But yeah, La Resistance, they were the babyfaces in this match. But it's weird because they worked as the heels. They got the heat on Edge, and Benoit made a hot tag, and they cut Benoit off, got the heat on him, and then Benoit made a tag into Edge. This match was absolutely insane just because you had clear-cut babyfaces. I know you probably planned out the match. I know they're the face tag team champions. I know to a majority of the Raw audience, this is the tag team champions, Edge and Benoit. They are the faces, and La Resistance are the heels. I understand that for like 99% of people watching at home, that's the case. But for this crowd, they were pro La Resistance, and I'm surprised they didn't call an audible and just say, hey, let's just make you guys the baby faces in this tag team match, because that will get the crowd even hotter than they already were. Because when Edge was making his comeback, Edge was doing all these crazy moves. He was hitting missile drop kicks on him and shit like that. The crowd was booing. It was fast paced and everything, and Edge's comeback was pretty good, but the crowd just wasn't having any of it. Also, like halfway through this match, JR and King, they just started talking about like Canada, and just King asked JR who Canada's prime minister was, and JR didn't know, and then King just roasted JR for not knowing that. So eventually Edge makes his comeback, and then shit hits the fan, and everyone's in the ring, and then Edge accidentally spears Benoit, and then La Resistance hits some sort of double team finisher, it was kind of like a Eminem snapshot, but instead of like dropping him face first, they kind of did like a neck breaker, and they won clean, which it surprised me because I really thought, because I remember at Bad Blood, which is 2 weeks from now, in May 31st, 2004, Bad Blood was 2 weeks from now, I really thought that Edge and Benoit, I knew they had a tag team match because I knew Benoit had 2 matches at Bad Blood. I really thought they defended the tag team championships, but I went back and I watched the first match of Bad Blood, or just, I watched the first entrance, and La Resistance came out with the titles. And I mean, I've watched Bad Blood 2004 a lot. Like, that was one of my first wrestling DVDs that I would watch. And like, there's a certain amount of pay-per-views from like 2003, 2004 that I just had on DVD that I would watch constantly, just because I had like 5 or 6 pay-per-views, because those were the only ones I had, and I couldn't go out and get more because I was a kid. I didn't have any money. I just had, birthday presents and Christmas presents and stuff like that, or like if I got good grades and shit, like I'd get, like a pay-per-view on DVD. But Bad Blood 2004 was like one of the first ones I owned, so I've watched that pay-per-view so many times. But I really thought that Benoit and Edge were the reigning tag champs going in, but they weren't. So, I mean, this match completely took me by surprise. So I thought La Resistance was losing, or at least if they were going to win, it was like a dusty finish or something like that. But, it was a good thing. The crowd got a good reaction. The crowd popped hard. The crowd kind of saved the match. The tag team match, it wasn't bad or anything. It was just, it wasn't all that spectacular. I'd say 2.5. I mean, it was good. I mean, it wasn't like any problem with it. But, it was just your average, ordinary tag team match. And then after that big reaction, like they come back from commercial, and La Resistance is like still in the crowd celebrating. Like that was the first like 20 minutes of this Raw were really good. Other than that, this show took a nose dive. So we had a backstage interview with Todd Grisham. He was interviewing Randy Orton. Orton says he's mad because Benjamin isn't in his league, and he says Benjamin could never beat him. And then Grisham says, well, Randy Orton, he beat you last week, and he showed the replay of the tag team match from last week where Benjamin beat Randy Orton with his T-bone suplex. So then Orton flips out and says it was like Shelton Benjamin, an accident. Then we had another backstage segment with Bischoff and Regal. Bischoff tells Regal that he has to gain control of the show after last week's debacle with Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Bischoff asks where Eugene is, and he conveniently shows up to a massive ovation from the crowd. They were fucking pro-Eugene in this crowd. I mean, granted, all audiences were, but this crowd loved Eugene. Bischoff says he appreciates Eugene, and he will give him a one-on-one match with one of his quote-unquote friends. Then Coach walks in, and Bischoff says he wants him to apologize to Eugene. Coach is like, I don't really feel like it. And then Bischoff gets all pissy, and he says, you know what? You're going to go right to the ring right now. If you value your job, you'll do it right now. You're going to apologize to Eugene in front of the entire world. So then we had Jonathan Coachman coming out for a promo. He asked Eugene to come to the ring, which he does. Coach says that Eugene is not a joke, and he's in fact the real deal. So Coach apologizes and says he has a friend that he wants Eugene to meet, and then all of a sudden the pyro goes off and it's Kane. JR is flipping his shit. He is pissed off. He's like, for the love of God, why the fuck is it Kane? And all that jazz. He's going absolutely crazy. So Coach tells Eugene that it's okay, and Eugene gives Kane a hug, which is very funny considering, Kane has given a lot of people hugs in the middle of the ring. For someone who's, who attempted to murder his brother, he's given a lot of people hugs over the past couple of years in his career. So Coach tells Eugene that apparently Kane is his friend, but he is not, and he attacks Eugene from behind. Kane acts like he's going to attack him. JR's cheering Kane on, and then all of a sudden, Kane turns around and gives Eugene a big lariat, and Eugene's down. He's all embarrassed, and he's sad and confused. And then Coach exits the ring, and he starts laughing and rolling on the floor, and he's going all crazy. So then we had a backstage segment with Bischoff and Coach. They're both laughing about it. Regal barges in. He's all pissed off for what they did to Eugene. And then Bischoff yells at Regal. He tells him not to show up in the Eugene versus Kane match tonight because anyone who interferes in that match will be fired. Then we had a women's match, Victoria versus Jazz. It was during this match where they said Raw was sponsored by N-Gage. And for those of you who don't know what N-Gage is, it was this mobile video game console, which fucking sucked. That's all I need to know about it, but it was horrendous. I think it was made by Nokia, but yeah, it was really, really bad. It had a lot of big names for it, I think, but it was like $600. I think N-Gage was the one where I think there were commercials in between your games. Like it was really, really bad. So I just saw that, and because I'm a video game nerd, I was like, oh my God, get that thing away from me, which is actually an omen considering this Raw sucked so much dick. Like no wonder N-Gage sponsored it. So Jazz pretty much takes the entire match. Like she's working over Victoria the entire time. Victoria tries to do her split spot, and this was actually kind of hilarious. Victoria does the splits to try to avoid Jazz, and then Jazz just stops in the middle of the ring and just elbows her and stomps on her while she's doing the splits. Kind of looked a little brutal, but Victoria was pretty flexible, so I guess it didn't hurt her that much. So Victoria hot shots Jazz on the bottom rope, and then Jazz charges Victoria, and she hits a power slam. Victoria goes for a standing moonsault. Jazz pulls her tights and tries to roll her up, but Victoria is able to get her cradle, and she gets the win. So Victoria is celebrating, and then the best part about this is they show the graphic for the main event tonight, which is Kane versus Eugene, but they're doing this to Victoria's theme song. So it's like go ahead with your bad self, with your bad self, with your bad self, and then all of a sudden, Kane and Eugene are shown on the screen, which is really, really funny. So then we had Shelton Benjamin versus Randy Orton, who was accompanied to the ring by Batista. This match was a fucking disaster. I don't know what went wrong here. I'll tell you what went wrong. A lot of it was Randy Orton. So Benjamin starts, and early on in the match, Batista is trying to distract the ref so Orton can unhook the top turnbuckle, which is like the story of the match. Like, every time someone unhooks the top turnbuckle, it always comes back to bite him in the ass. Orton, I don't know what was wrong with him today. He could not untie this damn turnbuckle. Batista had to do a distraction spot like 3 different times in this match so Orton can try and, remove the top turnbuckle pad. It was a fucking mess. And then all of a sudden, they try to whip Benjamin into the corner, and they do a headbutt spot, like where Benjamin threw on the brakes and he turned around and Orton charged at him and they clonked heads. They did this spot all the time in wrestling. But I don't know what happened here. It sounded brutal, and Orton came up and he was bleeding. So I'm assuming that was legit. I don't understand why you would do, you wouldn't really blade for a spot like that. But Orton probably clocked his head. It probably wasn't it might have been really bad. But, sometimes if you hit your head just the right way, you might be okay, but it will bleed a lot. And that might have just been what happened to Orton, because he was able to continue and he looked fine. So they go back and forth some more. Eventually, Batista just, pulls Benjamin out of the ring and throws him in the barricade. The ref suspects this and he throws Batista out, and then it's back and forth for a bit, and then Orton hits a thumb to the eye on Benjamin. He bails. So Benjamin goes after him on the ramp, and then Orton sucker punches him. He throws Benjamin back in the ring, and then Benjamin hits a T-bone suplex for the win. I'm going to give this match a star. It was okay, but all the shenanigans of Orton not being able to get that turnbuckle off, and just, it completely ruined the match. I understand shit happens, but Orton was breaking character because he couldn't get this damn turnbuckle unhooked. And that's just, in any sort of performance, you never want to do that, because it just makes the whole match look bad. So then we had a backstage interview with Stacy Keibler. So she's doing a photo shoot, and this was, oh my God, this was so bad. In preparation for the Diva search, Todd Grisham asked Stacy, what is it a diva does? And Stacy, as she was blatantly reading lines off a cue card. She would talk to Todd, and then she wouldn't turn to the camera to speak. She would look off in the distance, to the right. And she was like, well, we travel the world. We get to do some hot photo shoots, and we get to kick butt in the ring. And she just, the typical early 2000s women's wrestling stuff, just completely, just absolutely uninspired. And she definitely was not into this, and she definitely didn't know what she was going to say, because she was blatantly reading stuff off of a cue card. And then she asked Todd if she can get back to her photo shoot, and Todd obliges. Then we had a Triple H promo. Triple H says the fans don't need to worry about a surprise attack because Shawn Michaels is banned from the building. And actually, Shawn Michaels never showed up on this Raw, so I guess he actually was right. Because every time someone's like, oh, this guy, he's not here tonight, he's always there. You know what I mean? But he was actually right. And then he said, this will be the end of one of the greatest rivalries of all time. And again, I'm not going to be that guy who's like, oh my God, this isn't a great rivalry. What is he talking about? Because as you remember from one of my pet peeves videos, I don't mind, a wrestler or WWE building something up as the greatest of all time, because you got to sell your match. You know what I mean? You got to hype it up. So even if it isn't the greatest, you're still going to say it is, just because you need to promote your match. But I was thinking about it, and it was how many sure, they had that rivalry in 2002, but between 2003, they really didn't touch, except for that last Raw, which kicked off the 2004 feud. So it was really, really odd to say this is the greatest rivalry when really it hadn't been going on for a very long time. It was just kind of sporadic. And in the 90s, Shawn Michaels and Triple H were always buddies. So I don't know what was going on there. I kind of questioned him on that. And then he showed a video package. It featured that song. I think it was Drowning Pool. I think they sang Triple H to the ring at WrestleMania 18 with this song, but it showed his victories over Kevin Nash, Jericho, and Cactus Jack in the 3 previous Hell in a Cell, one-on-one Hell in a Cell matches he was in. Triple H always claimed he never lost a Hell in a Cell match, but he was involved in that 6-way Armageddon Hell in a Cell. So, and as far as I'm concerned, he lost that match. So I guess he was never pinned, because I don't think he took the pinfall. I can't remember who Kurt Angle pinned. I thought he pinned Rock, but I might be wrong about that. But I know he didn't take the pinfall. So maybe that's his claim. He never was pinned, but then he would be later. But, that was besides the point. At this current point, he'd never been pinned in a Hell in a Cell. So that was it. That was the promo, and it really wasn't all that bad. I mean, it was only 2 minutes, and then he talked a little bit more, and then with the video package, it was probably maybe 3 or 4 minutes tops, and then he was gone. So that's all I needed, and that's all you really need for a promo. Then we had a quick backstage segment with Johnny Nitro and Eric Bischoff. Bischoff tells Nitro he wants him to get Eugene. That was it. So then we had Matt Hardy versus Garrison Cade. Matt Hardy's quote-unquote Matt facts included that his life is better with Lita, and that he and Lita both hate sprinkling water. So the more you know there. Cade gets the better of Matt, and he starts beating up on him, and then Matt throws Garrison Cade outside the ring and hits a crossbody. Cade tries a lariat and then gets side effected. I guess that would be the correct term, the past tense of the side effect. He gets hit with a side effect. There you go. Cade hits another lariat and then goes for a pile driver. Matt Hardy reverses it and hits a top rope leg drop, and then he hits a twist of fate. Actually, it was a pretty good twist of fate. This match was really, really boring, and it was really by-the-books match, but he did hit a pretty good twist of fate on Garrison Cade, so I'll give the match that. Whatever, half a star, whatever. So then we had a backstage segment with Bischoff and Eugene. Bischoff asks Eugene if he's okay for his match tonight, and Bischoff tells him he knew Eugene would get attacked, and he's showing him tough love. Bischoff says he doesn't belong here, and Eugene's match against Kane is his chance to prove Eric Bischoff wrong. Eugene goes to walk away. Bischoff says, "Can I have a hug?" And then Eugene very reluctantly goes in and hugs his uncle Eric Bischoff. Then we had a highlight reel segment with special hosts, Trish Stratus and Tyson Tomko. Trish says she's going to be the hostess of tonight's highlight reel. She gives a shout out to Christian. Trish shows a replay of Jericho getting powerbombed right through the announce table, much to her satisfaction. I'm sorry. Trish calls the cops, and then she says, "Hello, 911. It seems like Tomko and Trish just stole the show. This made King. King loved that one." And then all of a sudden she turns to JR and apologizes for Tomko wrecking the table, and she does a perfect impersonation of Jim Ross, and King was laughing at that too. And then she says she enjoys Tyson's work, and she says no one on the roster should become a problem, and if they want to know what will happen, let's take another look at the footage. And all of a sudden there's a big explosion. Jericho comes out, taped ribs and all. He fights with Tomko, hits a running enziguri. Trish gets in the ring, and then Jericho goes for the walls of Jericho on her. Tomko boots him in the face, and then press slams him onto one of the chairs in the highlight reel set, right on his ribs, so Jericho is worse for wear, and Tomko and Trish celebrate and stand over him. Then we have a backstage segment with Kane. I really can't even call this a segment. The camera just panned around him, and then he looked right into the camera as if to say, "I'm up next." Which he was. Main event, Kane versus Eugene. Kane goes for a hug to start the match off, and Eugene's having none of it. Eugene, again, Nick Dinsmore, for all intents and purposes, is a very good wrestler. He was doing some great chain wrestling. He was hitting some roll-ups and some good holds. Kane was, taken aback by the skill of Eugene, and eventually he just gets up and just decks him in the face. So Kane works him over for a bit. Eugene tries to come back with an arm wringer and then a headlock, and then Kane hits a right hand. And then Kane hits a snapmare, which was one of the oddest things I've ever seen in my entire life. So then Kane starts hitting Eugene, and Eugene tries hulking up. He starts, fighting back. He starts hitting him with a bunch of lefts and rights, and the crowd's going crazy for Eugene. And then Kane gets frustrated. He punches Eugene. Eugene's out on the mat. Kane goes and gets a chair. Then the ref comes in. He tries to get the chair away from Kane. He shoves him off. And then Eugene's able to trip Kane up and hit him with a DDT onto the chair. And then the ref calls for the bell and says because Kane pushed the ref, Eugene wins by disqualification. After the match, Kane attacks Eugene, goes for a chokeslam, hits it, and then goes for a tombstone piledriver onto a chair. Fortunately, Benoit comes out for the rescue. He tries to put Kane in the crossface. Kane powers out and escapes the ring. And that's the end of Raw. Overall, this Raw was nothing to write home about. Kinda sucked. Was not a fan. But anyway, that's it for me. My name is Jericholic8704, and I will see all of you later.